Imagine you wake up at a casino table with one chip. The chip is your entire life. Across from you is an empty chair, possibly occupied by God, and beside it is a sign saying the prize may be eternal happiness. You are not allowed to leave. Apparently, management has policies. Should you bet on God, just in case? That is the basic idea behind Pascal's wager, and the short answer is that it may give you a practical reason to explore religion, but it does not prove that God exists, tell you which religion is true, or guarantee that you can make yourself believe. The wager is clever. It is also standing on several trapdoors. Blaise Pascal was a 17th century French mathematician, physicist, and religious thinker. His famous wager appears in the Pensées, a collection of notes published after his death. Pascal was not offering another proof of God's existence. He was addressing someone who thought reason could not settle the question. So Pascal changes the subject. Suppose the evidence leaves you uncertain. You still have to live somehow. You will either organize your life around God, or you will not. Refusing to place a bet is itself a bet, because the small casino is also moving through time and will eventually close. The familiar version uses 4 boxes. Bet on God and God exists, and you receive infinite happiness. Bet on God and God does not exist, and you lose something finite, perhaps time, pleasure, Sunday mornings, or the opportunity to behave disgracefully with greater efficiency. Bet against God and God does not exist, and you gain some finite freedom. But bet against God and God exists, and you may lose infinitely. If even a tiny positive chance of infinite reward is multiplied by infinity, the expected payoff seems infinite. A 1% chance of endless happiness still overwhelms any ordinary cost. So, Pascal says, wager for God. This is not the childish argument that God has a 50-50 chance of existing merely because there are 2 options. A sandwich either contains a diamond or it does not. But this does not make lunch a financial strategy. Pascal's deeper point is that a finite stake may look negligible beside an infinite possible gain. We use similar reasoning in ordinary life. You wear a seatbelt even though you probably will not crash today. You back up important files because your laptop has the emotional stability of a cupboard full of plates. A small inconvenience can be rational when it protects against a very large loss. But Pascal's wager is stranger than insurance. Insurance begins with reasonably understood risks. We have evidence about car crashes, house fires, and laptops choosing death. The wager concerns an outcome we cannot observe in advance, with a payoff structure supplied by a particular theology. The arithmetic may work perfectly, while the labels on the boxes remain disputed. If you appreciate careful thinking accompanied by drawings that have clearly abandoned worldly ambition, subscribe to Badly Drawn Philosophy. The first major problem is belief itself. Suppose I offer you $1 million if you sincerely believe there is a tiger in your kitchen. You may want the money. You may repeat, "There is a tiger in my kitchen," while opening the fridge with appropriate caution. But wanting a belief does not normally produce it. Belief seems to respond to what appears true, not to what offers the best prize. You can choose to say something. You can choose to behave as if it were true. Sincere conviction is less cooperative. It does not arrive merely because someone has placed a large number on a chart. Pascal knew this. In the Pensées, his imagined skeptic says that he is unable to believe. Pascal's answer is not to flick an internal belief switch. He recommends beginning with actions. Participate in worship. Pray. Spend time with believers. Live in ways that might cultivate faith. This makes the wager more psychologically plausible. We cannot directly choose every belief, but we can influence the conditions under which beliefs form. A person can read arguments, join a community, practice rituals, and pay close attention to religious experience. Habits shape perception. Sometimes acting as if something matters makes its significance easier to see. Of course, this can work in alarming directions. If you expose yourself only to one viewpoint, avoid criticism, and repeat a claim daily, you may become more confident without becoming more accurate. The same method could produce faith, political fanaticism, or a firm conviction that your neighbor's recycling bin is part of a campaign against you. So Pascal may show that we can choose a path toward belief. He does not show that this path is truth-tracking. Deliberately cultivating belief because it would benefit you is different from following the evidence wherever it leads. Then the casino becomes crowded. Pascal's simple table has God on one side and no God on the other. But which God? Different religions describe different divine beings, requirements, rewards, and forms of salvation. Some emphasize belief. Others emphasize conduct, ritual, grace, enlightenment, or a complicated combination that appears to require several shelves. We can also imagine a God who rewards honest skepticism and dislikes strategic belief. Call this the professor God. The professor god watches someone study the wager, calculate the infinite payoff, and begin praying as an insurance policy. The professor god adjusts a pair of tiny spectacles and writes, "Motivation questionable." Or imagine a hidden god who rewards people for believing in no gods. Now betting on the Christian god could carry an infinite loss. Once rival possibilities offer conflicting infinite rewards, the original calculation no longer selects a clear winner. Every box on the table begins shouting infinity, which is not how useful tables behave. A defender of Pascal can reply that not every imaginable god deserves equal consideration. The invisible turnip of final judgment is logically possible, perhaps, but possibility alone does not make it credible. We should use history, testimony, philosophical arguments, religious experience, and internal coherence to narrow the options. That is reasonable. But notice what has happened. Evidence has returned. The wager was supposed to guide us when reason could not decide. Now reason must determine which religious possibilities are serious enough to enter the calculation and what probability each deserves. This does not make the wager worthless. It changes its job. Instead of proving that you should accept one religion, it may tell you not to dismiss religious questions casually if you think the stakes could be enormous. The wager becomes an argument for investigation rather than conviction. There is also the question of cost. The simplified wager often says that if God does not exist, the believer loses almost nothing. But a religious life can involve substantial commitments. Time, money, relationships, dietary rules, sexual restrictions, political choices, guilt, comfort, community, generosity, fear, and hope may all be affected. Those effects can be good or bad. Pascal thought religious commitment could make someone faithful, humble, grateful, generous, and truthful. Many believers would say faith provides meaning and community in this life, not merely a ticket for the next one. Critics can point to harmful teachings, wasted opportunities, or anxiety created by threats of punishment. The earthly cost cannot simply be written as zero. It depends on the religion, the person, and how the belief is practiced. This is a life, not a coin left briefly on a table. Finally, even if prudence recommends religious practice, does that count as faith? There is nothing automatically dishonest about beginning from self-interest. People visit a doctor because they fear illness, then develop a genuine respect for health. Someone may enter a community for companionship and later care deeply about its ideals. Mixed motives are normal. Human beings rarely begin important journeys wearing perfectly clean philosophical trousers. But a wager cannot manufacture trust, love, repentance, or devotion. At most, it can get someone through the door. If faith requires a genuine relationship with God, then calculating the safest afterlife policy is not the finished product. It is paperwork in the lobby. So, is Pascal's wager a good reason to believe? As evidence that God exists, no. The size of a possible reward does not make the claim offering it more likely to be true. A stranger promising you $10 billion is not more credible than one promising $10 simply because his number has more zeros. As a decisive practical argument for one religion, probably not. The many gods problem, uncertain probabilities, real earthly costs, and conflicting ideas about salvation prevent the neat four-box table from settling the choice. But as a challenge to indifference, the wager remains powerful. It asks whether uncertainty really excuses us from making any decision. We cannot suspend our lives until the universe provides clearer documentation. Our habits already express what we treat as real, valuable, and worth pursuing. The best lesson may not be believe because the prize is infinite. It may be, if you think an important possibility has not been ruled out, decide how seriously it deserves to be investigated. That principle applies beyond religion, although usually with fewer angels and less eternal accounting. We began with one life chip at a mysterious casino. Pascal tells us we must place it somewhere. His critics remind us that we do not know the rules, the odds, the prize, or even who owns the building. Still, the chip is already on the table. The wager does not tell us where to place it. It tells us that living is the placing.